What is up, YouTube? We are on location at the shop because we've been very busy again. So this is kind of a fun one. Public works for a local municipality. Going into their little water park area. Get to paint the faces and all that. But those had several coats of powder on them, so those are stripped. Just got these odd sissy bars in, 1-inch solid bar. They are very, very heavy on relatively thin flanges. I don't know. I didn't make them. I'm just coating them. But we are at the shop today because I spent all day yesterday deep cleaning. Flip-flopped from other videos. This table used to be over here. Still not done, but mostly there. The last time I was welding up the firebox for the gas conversion on the oven, I'm not going to go over there. I melted my TIG torch line. So I got a new TIG torch hooked up. Have not used it yet. Just got it all set up. We need to do the intake. So where we left off, got this set up. Intake gasket will sit here. And we are going to start at the base first. So here's kind of what we did. I took the handmade intake flange. This drops down here and gets bolted in with some M6x1 hardware. So that bolts on, centered up really nice. And then I took a set of 7/8 handlebars and cut them down a little bit more. So essentially, this will sit just like that. Now, I was excited to use the new TIG torch because it's got a flex head, but it's really tight around the powder. I don't know why that just turned off, sorry. But we got the intake set up here. This will drop in like so. You get the picture. Flange to there. This drops in. And we get a nice section to weld around the outside. Now, since it is a custom-made flange and custom-made fitting here, this drops in and fits pretty flush. I might need to clean up the inside a tiny bit, but I did mark 3 lines. If you look here, 3 lines on the flange. Come on, lighting, focus. 1, 2, 3. And on the pipe, 1, 2, 3. So rather than try and weld it on here, we'll pull that off and weld this up on the bench. Then we get set up and we'll try out this new torch. Just make sure everything is kind of set up and working the way it's supposed to. Clear a little bit of space here. And lay this thing out. See if I can rig something up here. Unfortunately, my bench is not the straightest either. Grab a flat plate. That should work. At least get us in the ballpark. It is going to be a little bit tight around the bolt holes on here. It's been a while since I've gotten to play welder. Tacks to hold her. And I need to find my bench. melted a little bit on me, so it's kind of expected. We can remachine that flat too if need be, but just do a quick mock-up on here. Make sure everything is kind of roughly fitting the way it's supposed to. One downside here. Everything's very hot. There's one. All right, that bolts in. I think that ought to work. Good enough for me. Directions there. Maybe I'll regret that later, but for right now, I think that's about good. On to finish welding. Outside flanges are done, so now I'll let it cool a little bit. And we'll do the inside. One little pinhole here, we need a little more heat to burn out the crap that I didn't clean. Not at all the right way to do that. That's a moped. That should work there. Now, unfortunately, I do have a little bit of a gap on this side. Technically, I don't think it should matter that much, but I'd like to just put a quick bead around there and then we'll machine that flat. So sandpaper on a block of wood or something, or on a flat surface should help there, but at least it'll be double welded, which is way overkill. I actually don't know if I'm going to weld the rest of this. I don't know if I'm going to have to. I could. Then I got to grind it down anyway. Yeah, screw it.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how about you? Yeah, never fails. First day I come in to try and work on a bunch of my own stuff, we're slammed with customers every 5 minutes. So I ended up welding the inside of this. Normally, I didn't really want to do that for 2 reasons. One, it might distort this edge a little bit, but I did want to build this up because I think I might actually Dremel this out a hair. So that's welded. I'm most likely going to run this over to my buddy's shop and just mill the face flat. Then we're going to have to reopen up the bolt holes a little bit around the welds. Very tight fit through there. So we'll let that cool. Then we'll remount it up on here. Maybe we'll belt sand it first before we mill it. Decisions. Either way, whatever we're gonna do, I haven't decided yet. You'll find out once I make that decision, but we have an intake. I have to drill the holes again from the backside, just alleviate whatever tiny bit of welds I kind of pushed through on the side there. But there's the first part. Once this is bolted on, we're going to do the same thing with the flanges that we fabbed up the other day. Oh, almost hit the gasket. So this is set up for the VM20, so it is a little bit bigger. Got quite a bit to fill if we want to run this, or I'll hack up a 1-inch bar and make a little spigot flange that'll press fit onto here. I'm not quite sure. Or maybe I'll just make a smaller flange for the Mikuni, the 18 mil, because the 18, really loud with the compressor, I apologize. With the 18, it's almost a perfect swap. So I think I might actually do that. Let's make a new flange. I'm not going to film that, but I will make a flange with a smaller carb. Flange goes much faster, so we made the new one. I missed the mark just a sliver, so I had to widen up one hole. It's a little thin on this side, but it'll work for now. And there's a good chance that this might be getting switched back. So intake side onto the motor is done. Finish welded all the way around. I still got to run this over a flat plate with some sandpaper. But we essentially now have a press fit. I used a 7/8 hole saw on here. This will be a nice little flange, which, take the carburetor, M6 hardware is going to bolt in, here and here. Bolts thread in nice, that'll sit flush on the flange there. I could take a little more time and smooth this a little bit more, but not that worried about it. This will work just fine. Then we have our carb, 7/8 diameter. You can almost see it. The O-ring sits on the outside of the flange. Bam. Almost a perfect fit. So, what that means is we're ready to bolt this up to the motor, provided these holes still work. We'll open that up with the drill bit real quick from the backside. Just a quick pass on both of those. Drop some hardware in, get this mounted up, and then we'll mark it to weld up the flange. On by the intake. This works, clears the frame, so I'm like 3/4 of the way. I actually need shorter bolts here. I only have 1-inch hardware. I don't have a lot of metric. Looks tight, but it's a fixed piece, so there's enough clearance there. Probably an 1/8 inch or so. I don't know how well that's going to show up. Then the flange and the carb. Now, if I run this directly pitched the way that it sits, the carb's going to hit the frame, which is kind of unfortunate. But we have enough room to pull the intake off. This is cut on an angle like this. If I feather this so it goes down a little bit, essentially leave the top, and we'll cut this something like that. Almost like a pie cut there. That will allow me to drop the intake a little bit flatter, and then the carb will sit much more level. Because I kind of want it like this. So, a little bit of trimming on here, pop these bolts out, more grinding, and then we'll test fit in a minute. have to angle this a little bit more than I wanted to, but I think that should still work. Let's see what this looks like on the bike. Bring it down in a minute. Huh. Actually, the other option, I can still clock this if for some reason this doesn't work. I can drill and tap the cylinder still, if need be. I wonder if this spigot for the throttle cable's clockable. Let's see what we're working with. Yeah, it is. Maybe? Nope. Has to go one way. That's unfortunate. That right there will work. Very tight and very close, but that should actually work. Bring you guys down to ground level. Not much room. Definitely keeps everything tucked in. I don't think the angle is going to be too much. I can shave a little bit more off of the bottom too. I like it like that. I think we're gonna go for it. Throw a couple tacks on, see what happens. We'll lay one weld out here, a couple tacks, see what happens. I kind of got a position where I want it. So, let's see. Try and leave it in a spot where it's easy enough to replace if need be. Nice and warm. Tight spaces with welding gloves is not fun trying to get hardware started. I think this will work just fine. Snug this one side up, then we'll grab the carb. I don't know how straight this is. Intake angle really changes quite a bit. Not a lot of room here. Where's my other bolt? Probably should have pulled the O-ring off of this too, but that'll sit there. I'm not going to tighten this because it's still hot and there's a rubber O-ring. But we got room. I'll yank this off and finish welding it. We have a lot more room. A lot more room on the intake side in terms of welding up around this flange. So, I think this should be in pretty good shape. I'll leave this on the thick steel plate here just to and dissipate some of the heat, because I did go with a slightly thinner flange. I wanted to use 1/4 inch, but I used up all my material making the other one. Those are the really big sections that I want to cut down. Side. I am going to weld up the inside of this too, only because I don't want that gap in between there. So I'll weld around the inside of this, let it cool a little bit, come back, weld the inside, and then we can actually port that a little bit in terms of trying to smooth out the transition into the intake. So let me let this cool. Finished up the inside. Now I can kind of Dremel and smooth out the outside of that. I know it's a little more work, but I like having that double welded. Probably not necessary at all, but the other thing I just remembered is I do have a spacer plate on the intake, so if we do need a little more clearance on the carb, run a longer bolt, we'll use the intake up, and then I'd say rubber O-ring on this, flat on the back. The O-ring on the carb will match up to the flat side of this, and then the O-ring on here will mate up to the intake surface. So that pretty much wraps that up, and let me let this cool. Once that cools off enough, we'll grind it smooth real quick and pre-grind smooth, mount it up, and that's about it for today. Well, that wraps this one up. Intake is on. It's cooled off for quite a bit now. It's still a little warm, but nothing to worry about. Flange mount works. They might run that spacer plate anyway. Where is all that? I should clean all this up, but that can wait until tomorrow. So I got this spacer plate that can go in between here. That'll give me a little more gap too, if need be. But from the front of the bike, nice straight shot into the piston port inlet. Not a ton of clearance, but it should work. Enough room to engage the choke. And obviously I just gotta snug these down. These are 1-inch bolts. I don't have anything shorter. I need 3/4 here, and that should be plenty to snug that up onto the motor. Plus we got the gasket down there. Well, I'm pretty happy with it for version 1. We'll blast that and coat it. Probably black at some point. I don't know. Daddy's in charge of the colors, so that's hers. Now we get to do the exhaust. So this will be up here until we get around to the exhaust. Very happy with the rearrange over here. I gotta move that power washer upstairs, but I can actually get to my torches now. I haven't seen those in months. Welders are here on wheels, ready to move and do whatever. And then then we can lay out the exhaust. So I kind of like that torch. It's a little smaller than my old one. Flex head, barely, but getting used to it. I also didn't really check any of these settings or change stuff, which is fine. Thanks for watching. I'm rambling. We'll catch you guys on the next one.